Now we're going to begin. Yes, we're going to have a discussion today around the topic of the 50 before and the 50 to come. Many of you attended the event in Vienna last weekend, and it got Nicholas, Jacob, and I thinking about what is relevant to think about at this time. It's kind of a very interesting time to reflect, but also to use our reflections to progress and move on. So we wanted to take time to think about that. So the unification movement in its various forms has just celebrated its 50th year in Europe. Yeah. From this is not in Europe, but anyway, we're taking the whole history and putting it in 50 to this. From this, I'm not sure if these are old unificationists, but they kind of have that spirit of that. So you see, single nationality, single race people to this. Uh, Multi-race people in a stadium that we funded and built and now own. So in 50 or 60 years, we have gone from this to that, which is quite astonishing. So what else has been achieved in 50 years? The unification movement has chapters in every European country, apart from Liechtenstein. I could not find any information on Liechtenstein. It's part of a network of a truly international movement. We still operate as a global movement. We don't have Europe doing its own thing and America doing its own thing. Of course, we still do have that, but we're still working towards similar goals and similar visions. We have countless successful international marriages. People from different cultures, backgrounds, identities have come together and formed solid relationships. We have second generation. This is kind of a point maybe a little bit underemphasized. Children of people who found faith and decided to find faith as well and continue that kind of investment and hope and dream and thought. We have continued participation in worldwide and national activity. People are still doing events centered on unificationist activities and ideas. We continue to send willing and committed participants to the blessing, people who understand the value and meaning of the blessing and want to live up to the ideals of that event. We have valuable assets and resources throughout the continent, both in people and buildings and land and all those kind of things. And we have third generation as well. So the second generation are making more people to continue this, and yet to see what the third generation make of everything, but anyway, they exist. So we also face present circumstances. We have things that we can see in today's society that affect our religion, our faith, our spirituality. So the unification movement is undergoing a period of transition as the reins are gradually being passed from, in many cases, those who joined by signing to those who joined at birth. So we are kind of changing the leadership, changing the direction and the people who lead. Um, and although thankfully this is something that's not yet done, and we still have a lot of wisdom and people still investing and still taking the lead in that way. The world is changing, faith is changing, and participation in religion is changing. Many people in today's society no longer want to be associated with a fixed identity or group or religion. They want to kind of pick from here, here, and here, although many do still as well. And what is important to us? What do we still want to be present for the next 50 years? When we have this conversation and thought in 50 years' time, what do we want to be there? So we feel that this is something that affects us all, whether we will be here in 50 years or not. The legacy of the first 50 will in part decide what happens in the next 50. We hope that, and I say Jacob, Nicholas, and I hope that this is something that's interesting to you and interesting to discuss this morning. So to illustrate our point, here is Nicholas with Reality. This was the first second generation service that has happened in, yes, yeah, November or December, October, I don't know. Anyway, so I wanted to kind of use this case study as an example for maybe what we're talking about. So the second generation services have been happening over the past few months, and it's been happening once a month. They exist because generally there is a feeling that Sunday services are important, they're a valuable activity, and it's good for younger people to be leading them. But therefore, you need people to give it. It extends, however, further as a way to ensure that more second generation are able to express their beliefs and their faith, not only in front of people who are similarly minded, to actual people who are not similarly minded. So this involves, therefore, if it's something that we as a community consider valuable, it involves strengthening it either through guidance of first generation members or older members, doesn't necessarily have to be first generation, to younger members to ensure that that continues. And it also means that second generation have to be interested in doing it. So there's that kind of need for that relationship. Or it might be replaced by something else. We might have internet services in the future where you can sit at home, watch Netflix, and then watch someone talking about something else. So that's kind of illustrating the idea that we've had something for 50 years, and do we want it in the next 50 years? And what does that involve? What does it involve to make sure that it happens? So here are our questions that we would like you to discuss. So what concepts and practices do we want to keep and promote for the next 50 years? So that's concepts like the blessing, purity, Sunday services, you know, ideas about heart, love, life, and lineage, all these kind of things. And what behaviors and actions do we need to make or change in order to enable or preserve this? If we want to do something completely new and make sure that that's our identity for the next 50 years, what would we need to do as a community to make sure that happens? Or what do we need to sacrifice? So we're going to pass it over to you. If you can make groups, and after about 15 minutes, we will reflect and we're going to write up what you say and maybe compile that into something else in the future. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, it's interesting. So if we just go through the notes very quickly again, just to see what similarities and parallels. Blessing is an interesting point. It's kind of mentioned a lot, and I think that's really key to a lot of people's relationships to this movement. Do we want to be a church? This is also something that we talked about. How do we maintain that? I think something that people was mentioning quite a lot was this still kind of physical thing that might be an interesting selling point, if you say, in one way, that even though everyone is kind of drifting apart a little bit through the internet and through that kind of taking over our experience, by making things rooted in the everyday, the physical, the tangible, that might be something that we could offer to people a little bit more. Again, traditions and rituals were mentioned, and how do we move beyond? But also the olive tree point is really interesting, that we're kind of still very new in many ways, and we still need time to develop. And then again, rituals, testimonies, it's a very nice thing. Maybe we can do that next season. Yes. And then faith, community, relationship to God, another very interesting point. And guidance to the blessing, those kind of things. So thank you everyone for sharing your ideas. We hope there's going to be one more second gen service in June before the activity year finishes. And we hope to try and put these things together in some way. I don't know how we'll do that. Present the new unification movement, Unification 2.0, I don't know, something like that, just to kind of be thinking more about that and kind of continuing that conversation. I hope it's something you'll continue to think about over the next week and whatever. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, everyone.